Welcome back to the Preaching Residency vlog here on the Studio 219 YouTube channel. Studio 219 is a place for faith and pop culture, and here on the Preaching Residency vlog, I, Brandon Knight, the traveling preacher pastor of Northwest Indiana, since October has been helping out two churches in particular who are without a pastor, a little bit a sense of either directionlessness or not sure where to start in this whole pastoral process, getting the church ready, all those kinds of things, and have called upon me to step in to fill the pulpit a little bit more long term than what I would normally do, like one or two Sundays at a time, or provide a little bit of perspective, wisdom, and prayer as they are navigating these waters of uncertainty. If you've missed any of the previous vlogs on this, you can go, there's a whole playlist that's got all of the videos together, so you can watch. I think this is the fourth part of this series. What's been interesting is that I don't know how long this is going to go on. I don't. There for a while, I thought this might be just like two videos and then see you later. But this has been a pretty consistent process since, like I said, about mid-October. In early February, through the month into the first week of March, I returned back to the first church that started this whole chapter of my life off with the Church of Hessville. So returned over there after a month-long stint over at Riverside Community Church in Hammond. It was nice to be back with the Church of Hessville, with the people there. I was missed. They missed me, and I missed them too. But I talked about the last time I was kind of breaking down my time. I think that was like the end of January video, talking about my time there. There started to become a little bit of a, man, it would be really nice if you were our pastor. And I talked about how there are some factors at play here, both personally and also just ministerially, that it will not work for me to step in as their pastor, filling in these shorter term, kind of to provide a little bit of stability. That's what I see myself as doing. I'm trying to provide a little bit of stability for this congregation. But there has started to become a little bit of this, we'd like you to stay, we'd like you to be our pastor, or wish you would be our pastor. And I've been trying to resist that as best I can and be respectful to the people in the congregation who are making these comments. But I thought maybe taking a little bit of time away would kind of help cool things off. They had a different person come in January to preach, and I got back in February, and it just picked right back up. So there's that. The frustrating thing, I think, for me, and this kind of, I think, shows a little bit of, it's not so much the priorities, but maybe more of like how we sometimes think, the perspective that a lot of people have on a pastor is that a lot of these comments of people who are like, man, I just wish you would be our pastor, is solely based off of my preaching, which obviously I think I've said before on the My Seminary Life podcast of like, preaching is the most obvious thing that a pastor does, but it is not the only thing that a pastor does. And the pastor does so much, especially depending on the context and of what the church, the health of the church, the various ministries, all that good stuff. So, and with my role primarily being, I am just there to preach and, be a familiar face to provide a little bit of stability. The fact that they're just saying based off of my preaching that, oh, you should be our pastor, I think kind of shows a little bit of what this faulty mentality that we have gotten ourselves into in the American church of good preaching equals good pastor. That's not necessarily the case. The role of the pastor the role of the shepherd of a church is so widespread. And I'm not doing a lot of the things, even basic things, that this church, the shepherd of this church should be doing. A lot of that is falling on the deacons, and that's part of the agreement, and I'm thankful for them, and I think we might need to like work a little bit more of making sure people understand who's really carrying the load here. I'm preaching, and that's important, but day-to-day operation, visitations, all those kinds of things, that's falling on the deacons, and they need to be highlighted for that work. I should not just be the pastor because, I preach well. Who knows? I might suck at business meetings. I recently was at a business meeting for something else, and there were certain parts of it that I enjoyed, and then there was other parts I was like, this is so boring. I don't like this. It's important. Business meetings are important, but whatever. Anyway, so throughout the month of February, I did a series called On Faith, which you can hear a variation of these sermons on the My Seminary Life podcast, as I highlighted on there more so the material that I was using to study and prepare for this series, mostly stuff from C.S. Lewis. I did like a 3-part trilogy. It turned out to be a series. I didn't really intend for it to be that way, but a 3-part series talking about faith and also joy, because the first Sunday of March, my last Sunday there for the time being, I did a sermon on joy, and you can actually see that sermon. It's the previous video here on the channel, so go check that out. I'm preaching a sermon on joy out of Psalm 30, and the good news is, thanks to a generous donation by somebody who supports all my various crazy projects, I now have the equipment that I need to be able to record my sermons when I'm at a church. So coming soon, there should be more sermons on the way here on the channel as well. And I say coming soon because I'm actually taking some weeks off. I do not have any more Sundays scheduled until early April. I'll be returning back to the Church of Hessville in early April. But I'm taking the majority of March off, and there's several reasons for that. And one of them is just this ongoing issue that I have had of my wanting to go to church. I don't really want to go to church, if I'm being honest. And it's been difficult for a little over a year now, maybe a year and a half. I don't think it's been quite 2 years now, to want to go to church and to also want to be around and interact with other Christians. And this has been a long process for me of just one, it's a lot of things. It's one part my disillusionment with evangelical Christianity in America and the people who are associated with it. It's both the church and the people. The church operation and the people. Because the church is the people. You know what I mean. So there's been this, just my general disillusionment with that, trying to understand what kind of a church I actually would even want to go to. Not only has my preaching residency, exposed me to a lot of different Sundays, and my preaching ministry that I've been doing for a little over 10 years now. Not only has it exposed me to a lot of different kinds of churches, and also I wasn't even at my home church very often anyway. I actually have this weird long history of not feeling very rooted in a church at different points, especially like in high school. My family bounced around to several different churches. When I was in college, I never really settled. And then when I got out of college is when this started. Is when all of this started. So it's been kind of this process for me of, what do I even want in a church? What values do I have for a church? And like, to feel rooted in one, even though I'm in this ministry field where I may not be there every Sunday, and especially right now where there are stretches where I'm not there for a month or more at a time. Plus, then there's the difficulty of this. I thought I was doing better, and I think I am, especially when it comes to interacting with other Christians, and also even just understanding like what the evangelical church is now in America. But I noticed that when the feelings started to like subside of like this anger and resentment and disillusionment, all these negative emotions, is when this residency process started. And it came to a point where I realized I enjoy going to church now because I have a lot of control. I have a lot of control. I can control what I preach. These churches are looking to me for guidance and wisdom. I can, pick songs. I can hold a prayer meeting. Like, I can do these things, and that is giving me control. I can make these churches kind of a little bit of what I want. But the reality is, these aren't going to last forever. These situations are not going to last forever. And so I was confronted with the reality of maybe I'm not as happy and comfortable with going to church as much as I like being in control of a church, which again doesn't make me qualified to be a pastor. Just because I like making things the way that I want them to be doesn't necessarily mean I should go plant a church, because in my opinion, that's actually a very toxic reason to start a church, is control to make it the way I want it to make it. That's not just towards me, that's towards anybody who has planted a church with that mentality of, we're going to do church the right way. We have all these denominations as a result of that. So the next step for me is certainly to take a little bit of a step back, sit in church, go to church, participate in church. I'm trying to fellowship with other believers, and then, try to decide like what matters to me, because I'm also in this situation right now where I feel like I have all of these voices around me. Here I am, I have my little pockets where I get to speak to people, to encourage people, but by and large throughout my life, I feel like there's been so many voices around me telling me what I should do, who I should be, and sometimes it just so clouds my judgment of like what I actually want, and also clouds my judgment of who actually has my best interest in mind. Because there have been people who claim to have my best interest in mind and claim to know, what's best for me, and they've become emotionally abusive and manipulative. And so it's hard for me to judge. There's even been times with my own wife recently where I'm like, it's hard for me to suss out if you have my best interest in mind or if you're just trying to control me, because I just feel like everyone's trying to control me and make me who they want me to be. All of this, though, brings me back to one little thing I said in one of my sermons, and trying to lead through this time period, especially here now in Lent. We're in this season of Lent. I'm trying to cut away as much stuff as possible, truly, so that way I can know God, but also know myself through how he sees me, and to just understand who I am and what I want. And that all sounds very selfish, but I think that's just where I'm at, of even understanding what do I want and how those things can be okay. But it brings me back to this one thing I preached during the Faith on Faith series. One of the messages was on that famous passage where Jesus says, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, jump, and it would jump. That passage. And I talk about how we don't know. Mustard seeds are tiny. We've all heard the tiny mustard seed illustration before. But I'm not a farmer person, so that's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around still, even though I've heard it 1,000 times. So I went with the great philosopher Winnie the Pooh and paraphrased him and said, if we just had a small smackerel of faith, is how I put it. And that's kind of where I am at right now, as I'm having this very probably cringe for some people, just very honest, I'm trying to minister, I'm trying to serve, and I have all these voices around me, and I don't know what I want, and I'm hurt, but I still want to have that small smackerel of faith in God through this process. I don't know what I'm hoping for out of all of this. A clearer head might be the simplest answer, but just to have a small smackerel of faith that God will still continue to be with me while I take these next few weeks off and I'm hoping, I'm praying that I heal, that I continue to heal, that I'll better understand myself, better understand what I want, and also, above it all, spend more time with God and know Him better, and also have, a better trust for my wife. I do think she means the best for me, but there's other people as well, but I brought her up. But I'm so just like wrapped up in all of this right now that I just need to step back, suss some things out, and move from there. So it's going to be a few weeks until you see this video again. There'll be other YouTube videos for the other shows here on Studio 219, but the next residency vlog is going to be a few weeks from now, probably sometime in like late April or so. I'm going to be, again, back at the Church of Hessville for 2 weeks, one of those being Palm Sunday, so looking forward to preaching the Palm Sunday message. And again, if all things work out, because now I have the equipment, you'll also be able to see the sermons and watch those as well. Thank you for listening to me just gush about how I'm feeling right now. I'm sorry if that was a little too personal. Probably it was a little too personal for the internet. Maybe I'll take this down later. We'll see. But thank you for watching. Please hit subscribe to the channel to see all the other faith and pop culture content that we have here. And we'll see you in the next video.